basically, this is our furnace. It's a normal ceramic oven. We've packed a 12-inch by 16-inch crucible inside, and then packed hard brick all the way around it to insulate it. And basically, we're running it at about 2250 degrees to cook the glass, and roughly this one's running at 2010 degrees of work temperature, and it's clean as can be. I mean, this thing's rocking and rolling. And when it's on, it's on, and when it's off, it's off. So once we start charging, I never turn that electric off, and it's always running.
Now that's where your raw glass is.
That's
right?
where the raw glass is.
Okay.
And we're taking it from a batch glass, which is basically just the minerals, the lime, and the silica, and we're cooking it down. And at 2250 degrees, that's when it actually cooks down and becomes glass. And then you have to squeeze all the air bubbles out of it by reducing the temperature, and then run the temperature back up to pop all those air bubbles off the surface. And then once all those have popped and the surface is clean, you bring it down to your working temperature, and away you go.
Oh, cool.
We're using a steel marber table with naphtha and beeswax to coat the top of it to keep the glass from physically sticking. This is what's called our pickup oven, which is just basically packed full of chunks of color and scrap bits, broken pieces sometimes. We save as much as we can to recycle. Color can come in 3 different types. It can come in a large bar, like these. It can come in a powder, like this, as well as frit, so small little chunks. And this would be different grades of frit, basically. It goes all the way down from a 1 to a 5. And here's a little more of it. Then we've got these 2 annealers right now, which basically hold the glass at 880 degrees. Once we're done with the piece, it goes in here, and we allow it to anneal, basically 20 minutes per millimeter of thickness. So normally it's a few hours before we shut the kilns down after we're done at the end of the night. And our glory hole over here runs roughly about 2300 degrees. It's got a 15-inch by 4-inch burner. It's running 270,000 BTUs. It's 18¼ inches around, and it's 33 inches deep. So if we blow a bowl basically 18 inches around, when you spin that open into a platter, it becomes double that size. So you can we can make a 3-foot platter is about our max. And then the kiln, the size of our annealer, is basically the limit we can on a vertical piece. Okay. Everything else is basically packed on this little bench. Just all our tools, paddles, diamond shears, snips.
Those are basically forming tools. Then,
absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely. As well as different size jacks, which are used to open the lip of a piece or make an indentation in the shape. And there's multiple sizes of these, depending on what you're working on. The whole variation basically requires different tools. Some are really thin, some are really thick. We use a normal file to basically scribe a line on the jack line, which these are jacks. You form that line on the end of a moil, which is basically the end of your pipe. And this is what actually separates the piece of the pipe, or the piece from the pipe, excuse me. And then you take water and a file and you scribe a line on that, and then smack the pipe, and it breaks the piece off. Depending on whether you're punnying up or not is the second attachment, which basically you take a solid punny rod like this one, you gather a small amount of glass on the end, you roll it back so there's just a little bit off the end of this that's actually going to physically stick to your next piece. Sometimes they don't go as well as they could, and we end up with a piece on the floor. But most of the time, we put them away, so.
Cool.
Other than that, the other forming tools that we actually use are cherry wood blocks. And basically the fruit woods hold water better. And so when you put a piece inside this, it's literally riding on the steam. and not on the block. So if you see the block start smoking, that's when you know you have to start dipping this again. Because if you're burning the wood, you're actually putting a mark on your glass, and you always want it to ride on the steam. It's the same principle with the wet newspaper. And basically, once you've soaked this, that piece of glass is going to ride in that shape. So the more pressure you apply, the more you'll squeeze the piece. The lighter you touch it, the more you'll allow that piece to blow out when we add air pressure. And it's always riding basically on that steam. And so when it starts burning, you have to keep dipping it in water, and you got to really watch your piece, because if you come on and you got a lot of water on your paper, sometimes you'll put a crack mark actually on the bottom of your piece. You'll cool it too much and it'll shock it. And it takes a long time really in the glory hole to reheat it enough to burn all those out.
Cool. So now, are you guys actually blowing? I noticed when we just watched that piece getting done that
Yes.
it looked like a lot of it was gravity when he was spinning the. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, basically, once that glass is hot, it's liquid, and so the angle to which you hold it basically shapes your piece and basically keeps your piece either level and keeps it in a ball shape, or the more you point it down, the more it's going to want to elongate. So gravity is sometimes your best friend, it's sometimes your worst enemy. Depending on how large your piece is, the more gravity takes it, the more it's really going to get off center. And the focus is really to be on center all the time when you're blowing your shape. And so when Dave wanted the piece to actually get larger, get longer, he swung it over his head. He used that G-force to literally pull that glass off the pipe. When he's pushing back on it with the paddle, or pushing back on it with the paper, he's basically squashing that shape back and trying to make it rounder instead of elongated.
And all that comes with probably doing a lot of pieces. And
Yes, absolutely. Just with time and with the more experience you have, the more you're basically focused on what you're doing, and the easier it becomes, basically. You have to really want to know what your shape is going to be before you start a piece. Sometimes it's not going to end up being what you wanted, and you have to be willing to basically just go with the flow and let it do what it wants to do sometimes. If you try and fight it too much, you're probably going to watch it go to the floor. The smoother basically you make it on yourself, and the more you don't fight it, the easier it is to actually make a piece come out the way you want it to. And yeah, experience is all, and practice is all I can really say. The more you do it, the more you feel physically comfortable actually making what you want and seeing what you want and actually making it happen. And that's what I love about glass. I mean, I can take a raw material that was a powder 3-4 hours ago, turn it into a liquid, work it for 20 minutes, and end up with a solid piece that, I mean, it's up to me to decide what it's actually going to look like.
Right.
And that's what I love about it, because you can be creative in so many ways and you never run out of ideas.
Cool. And with that said, we're going to watch these fellas make a few more pieces here.